Collaboration between AIS countries focuses on four thematic areas of collaboration, namely climate change mitigation and adaptation, blue economy, marine plastics debris, and good maritime governance. The Archipelagic and Island States Forum was established by Menando Joint Declaration.
We are different in many ways, but we share the same challenges.
The biggest problem I see is the climate change. There's something you could do. From today on, stop using single-use plastic. It's the very highest contributor for pollution in the sea.
The world is starting to wake up that we have long known, that without our precious environment, none of us have a future.
The AIS Joint Research Program is the AIS Forum mechanism to bring together academic communities from AIS countries and find smart and innovative solutions to environmental issues by providing research grants that focus on climate change mitigation and adaptation, blue economy, marine plastic debris, and good maritime governance. Universitas Padjadjaran and University of the Philippines have been working in developing ocean instruments to collect data using the IoT software and an integrated open-access data portal. The researchers successfully created an advanced drifter GPS oceanographic coverage area instrument, or ARHEA. This project has huge potential for growth, with the participation of researchers from other island states, where scientists and policymakers are facing similar difficulties in collecting and utilizing oceanographic data effectively. In 2021, AIS Forum partnered with University of Guyana and the University College London. The research project, entitled the Guyana Coast, Catchment and Marine Observatory, Data Integration and Analysis for Monitoring of Coastal Dynamics, aims to enhance Guyana's capacity to address the impact of climate change on its coastal environment through the development of a high-quality coastal database. This will enable coastal stakeholders to better monitor coastal change over various time frames. Later, the comprehensive coastal database developed can be used in other archipelagic and island states. Recently, James Cook University Singapore and Universitas Samratulangi have developed technology that provides benefits to small fishers, as well as managing fish stocks for sustainability. Both universities have been working with Fishcoin to harness mobile technology to develop sustainable fishing practices in Indonesia. Under their program, fishers are incentivized to tag and release juvenile catch. Their efforts are rewarded by mobile airtime top-ups. This technique is known as mark, release and recapture, and helps collect important data on fish stocks, as well as providing economic benefits to small-scale fishers. In June 2021, UNSRAT ran workshops to train the trainers to encourage the use of the technology in their region. Further training for community groups took place in September 2021. This project exemplifies the huge potential that the Joint Research Project has for AIS countries for the development of the blue economy and the empowerment of local communities. Successful joint efforts such as this reinforce the importance of the academic community to the work of AIS Forum. The AIS Forum will continue to engage with the academic community and other relevant stakeholders to utilize their expertise for the development of practical solutions to environmental issues affecting AIS countries.
So, good morning or good evening, everyone. So, wherever you are, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Archipelagic and Island States Forums webinar. So, if you just joined us or you don't know what the AIS Forum is, basically it's a platform initiated to put together 47 archipelagic and island states, regardless of size and location, to cooperate on common issues which are faced by these island nations around climate change mitigation and adaptation, blue economy, marine plastic debris, good maritime governance. Before going any further, I would like to thank the team behind the organization. Thank you for dedicating this webinar to such a critical topic. I would like also to thank the speakers for being available for this webinar and for sharing their knowledge with us, and for the participants who just joined us for fueling their thinking and giving ideas. Well, to start, my name is Shama Sanjuya, and I'm a marine scientist and a climate activist. I'm advocating for ocean protection as a climate action, but also as a step towards blue justice. So I will be the moderator for this webinar today. And the theme of the webinar is about conservation and sustainability for our ocean, using the law as a catalyst. Just to set the scene a bit, you know that the ocean is occupies 70% of the planet, and 40% of the planet is actually about the high seas. The ocean plays a really important role for regulating the climate, for marine life, for biodiversity, and also for the people. So it's a mean of sustenance. And for island states and archipelagics like Mauritius, for example, the ocean plays a huge role in our everyday life in terms of culture, identity, livelihood, heritage. And we know now that the health of the ocean, we can actually see it every day. The health of the ocean is declining because of the climate crisis, because of destructive activities, such as oil exploitation, deep sea mining, intensive fisheries, and pollution caused by industries, by shipping industry, and pollution from land. One of the things that led to this situation is basically the lack of regulations regarding activities at sea, also especially in the high seas. And this is why it's important for us to be using tools such as legislations, which are strong tools, to regulate these activities in the ocean and to ensure that the functioning of the ocean as a whole ecosystem is not disturbed to a point where it becomes a crisis, and to achieve justice for the planet and for the people. So today we will dive into this topic to understand the advances that have been made, the gaps that exist, and the role that legislations could play in matters regarding ocean conservation and sustainability among AIS countries in the African region, and eventually, if possible, identify ways that the law can be used, can become a catalyst of sustainability. So before going any further, I will introduce our speakers. So we have Marie-Valérie Oupia, who is a senior lecturer in international trade law and law of the sea and ocean governance at the University of Mauritius. So she is currently the head of the law department at the University of Mauritius. Thank you so much for joining us. She was a former student of Loreto College of Maibo, and she holds a BA with honors in law and management from the University of Mauritius and a master's in law in international business law from Birmingham City University. She's also a fellow of the NAM and ST Center and a ZMT Leibniz Center for Tropical Marine Research in Germany. And her work is about ocean governance, international trade, and maritime law. She has over 20 publications, including book chapters, journal articles, newspaper articles, and conference proceedings. So her research work has been established by internationally recognized publication houses. Her publications are being used by local, regional, and international institutions to promote the use and development of marine spatial planning by coastal states. Membership and awards. So basically, she is a member of the WIMSA, so the Western Indian Ocean Marine Science Association, the women managers in the maritime sector of Eastern and Southern Africa, and women in maritime sector. She is also part of the African Union Election Observation Mission. In 2019, she was nominated as a finalist of the prestigious UK Alumni Award 2018-2019, and in 2021, she became an alumni of the International Ocean Institute in South Africa for the ocean governance training, policy, law, and management in the Western Indian Ocean. So welcome, Marie-Valérie Oupia.
Thank you, Sharma. It's a real pleasure to see you and to see, fellow students and colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to be present today and to share my knowledge with everyone.
Perfect, thank you so much. So our next speaker is Krishni Apadu. So I will present a bit about Krishni. She is an academic at the University of Mauritius, and she teaches about environmental and climate change law and policy and jurisprudence and international development law and policy. She holds an LLB with French law, a diploma in French legal studies, an LLM in international legal practice, and an MA in diplomacy. She's enrolled on a PhD with the University of Western Australia, and she was a Fulbright visiting scholar at the University of California in Berkeley. She has worked at the International Criminal Court, the UN, the Supreme Court of Mauritius, in a multinational company and in NGOs. Krishni was the SIDS youth focal point for the AIMS region of the UN major group of children and youth. She has published on the subject of environmental and climate change law and policy, and she's the co-founder and co-director of Mind Matters Mauritius. Basically, Krishni is a climate, gender, youth, mental health activist. Thank you so much for joining us, Krishni. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Sharma. It's great to see you again. And just like my colleague and friend Valerie, I would like to thank the organizers for setting up this webinar. And I'm very grateful to see a lot of young people who are really interested with this topic. And I hope, like Valerie has said, that we will be able to share our knowledge and our experiences. Thank you.
So thank you so much. Now we can start with the presentation, Krishni. So basically just to the audience before we start, you can ask questions basically in the question and answer chat box. There's a special place for that. So we will take questions after the intervention of Krishni and after the intervention of Marie-Valérie Oupia. So Krishni, anytime you want to go, you're in for it.
I think as per the program, is it Valerie who goes first?
I think it's you, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Yes. Okay, so I will be talking a little bit about, I will leave the more legal aspect to Valerie, and I will focus more on how we need, there's an urgent need to focus our energy on the preservation of our oceans, especially from a sustainability perspective. And then I will also talk about whether whatever framework we have right now is enough to cater for the preservation and the conservation of our oceans. And then maybe my colleague Valerie can fill in more about the legal aspects and about the developments that have been made in terms of the legal framework for the protection of our oceans. So in terms of conservation of our oceans, I think more than ever now, we have seen that as in general, the environment is becoming at the foreground of all our concerns. With the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen how, if we do not take care of the environment, and if we, for example, go into the territory of wildlife, we have the danger that we are going in the years to come, apart from COVID-19, we are going to have a lot of other pandemics. So the environment, as I've mentioned, is becoming something that we should really be focused about. And we should not forget that after COVID-19, as we move into a post-COVID-19 world, maybe a lot of governments will be focusing on, economic recovery. But if we are focusing on economic recovery, it's not the time to forget our duties towards the environment. And as Shama has pointed out, we have seen over the last decade or so, there has been a lot of overfishing. There has been a lot of marine pollution, either from contributed by the shipping industry, pollution from land sources. We have also seen that we are using the ocean in a way that is not sustainable. So even in Mauritius, for example, as an island state, we are starting to talk about the blue economy. But when we talk about the blue economy, we do not have to focus on the world economy. I think we should focus more on the world blue. How are we going to exploit our oceans in a way that would be at the same time respectful about the diverse range of species and marine resources that we have in our oceans. So unfortunately, as has been pointed out by the moderator, we have seen that over the years, even though we have a long list, and I'm sure Valerie will be exposing all these legislations, whether domestic or international, that we have on the preservation of our oceans, over the years, even if the international community has come forward and, for example, we have a range of international treaties such as the Convention on the Law of the Sea, we have the Convention on the Conservation of Migratory Species of Wild Animals, Convention on Biological Diversity. Even in the presence of all of these international agreements where state parties have come together and they have you know, as a lecturer in international law, we know that treaties, they take a lot of time to be negotiated. So a lot of effort have gone into negotiating, you know, writing these treaties, working with the International Law Commission to come up with these treaties, and, you know, the long process that goes into treaty writing and negotiation. And even though countries have shown their willingness to, you know, sign and ratify these treaties, what happens is that in many countries, such as Mauritius, where we are a dualist nation, which means that treaties don't have legal value until we domesticate it into our national legislation. So what happens is, even though our leaders, they attend these conferences, they sign these treaties, and they appear to pay lip service to protecting the oceans, what happens is these treaties, they are not often domesticated. So what happens is, there is the danger that even if we have these treaties, then what happens when they have to be implemented at national level? So more often than not, states, because of the principle of state sovereignty, which is a principle of international law, so many countries, they shy away from actually domesticating these treaties. And when an environmental disaster crops up, and in Mauritius, in the Indian Ocean region in 2020, we had the Wakasho catastrophe. And what happened is that as activists, as environmental lawyers, we were very affected and by this catastrophe, but we saw that the government couldn't really do anything concrete because we didn't have really a national legislation which would cater for this catastrophe. And even in terms of diplomacy, it was very difficult, to actually say that, okay, the ship that caused the environmental damage, what were the different strategies, what were the different legal mechanisms that were open to Mauritius, as a state that was affected by this catastrophe, to go and ask for damages, from the owners of the ship. So I think, first of all, the main gap that can be identified is that even though we have international agreements for ocean conservation, we have to domesticate them. It is very important that we crystallize international agreements into domestic legislation. For example, very recently, after all the years that we are party to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, since 1992, 1993, it is only in 2020 that my own country, Mauritius, we came up with the Climate Change Act. And of course, we have several sections which pertain to, the protection, how, protection of the oceans can help mitigate the effects of climate change, different sections in that. So little by little, I think there's a lot of work that is being done by state parties to domesticate legislation. And I think that going forward, this should be the primary concern of state parties, to domesticate legislation relating to ocean governance. So I think this is the main gap that can be identified in terms of legislation relating to marine conservation. And I think also there is not the other gap that I would identify, and I don't know if my colleague or other scholars would agree with this, but I think in general, people, when a catastrophe happens regarding the environment, at first, we are all concerned by it. At first, we all raise our voices. But I think at some point, we all go back to our lives, and then we forget that, we have a duty towards the environment. So I think for all the young people who are here, I think we should train people, we should train the next generation of environmental lawyers. For the law to be a catalyst, and this is the topic of today's session, for a law to be a catalyst, for conservation and sustainability of our oceans, we cannot just have the law and it's there in international conventions and domestic legislation. We need to have people who are trained. We need to have environmental lawyers who are trained, at university level and further, so that they can become the next generation of environmental lawyers, for them to be able to advise governments whenever a catastrophe such as the Wakasho comes up, okay, because in Mauritius, we of course we have agencies, we have a lot of governmental institutions which advise the government in terms of of laws, but we need also to have a strong network of lawyers who would come up and say that, okay, we are here, and whenever like a catastrophe happens, we are here to protect the interests of the nation that has been affected by any ocean catastrophe. So I think it's very important to train this new generation of lawyers, okay, who would have the knowledge and who would have the skills to fight for, especially for small island developing states, to fight for countries that are bearing the brunt of all of these environmental catastrophes, especially climate change. So this is the second gap that can be identified. And then the third gap is also that I think the international institutions there should be greater collaboration in terms of the work of international organization, and even not international, but regional organizations such as the Indian Ocean Commission, the Indian Ocean Rim Association. All of these organizations, I think they should be working more collaboratively together. And they should be coming up with more bold policies and more bold strategies. And they should also be working in concert with local communities that are being impacted by, climate change, that are being affected by, dwindling fish, fishing opportunities. So I think it's important for these organizations to go on the ground, to speak and to have consultations with these people on the ground, and to see what are the problems that these communities living in coastal region and whose livelihoods depend on the sustainability of the oceans? What are their concerns? What are their day-to-day troubles? Okay, so I think it's very important, because if you just have an organization which, you know, works in a vacuum and like supposedly identifies issues that these people are having without actually going on the ground and consulting with them, I think it's not possible to really to understand their issues. So and also the International Law Commission should also be working together with these organizations and try to find what are the gaps, what are the challenges, and come up with very bold policies and strategies that would feed into international conventions relating to sustainability of our oceans. So this is I think my contribution right now in terms of how law really can become a catalyst for the preservation and conservation of our oceans. And I will now leave the floor to my colleague, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krishni. So just to wrap up a bit about what you just said, it was really interesting. Thank you so much for talking about that. So basically, Krishni has identified 3 gaps which she shared with us. And what's really interesting about it is that she tries to explain to us how it's really important to integrate the law in ecological issues. And like, for example, I've been seeing it from a scientific point of view, and now we see that in Mauritius there lacks like this part where lawyers, environmental lawyers, policymakers are also integrated in the whole process. We can see that it's absent. It's almost absent, and that's a really important thing I wanted to mention again. And also what one of the points that really is important to note down is the collaboration with international organizations, yes, but not just with universities and academics, but also on the ground, to go on the ground and actually listen to the local communities, because their livelihoods depend directly on the ocean. So thank you so much, Krishni, for that. It's really interesting. So Valérie, now it's your turn for a really nice intervention. Thank you again.
Yes, I have made a small PowerPoint presentation to just illustrate some of the points which I'm going to put forward. So I'm just going to share my screen so that you can you all see the screen?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Thank you again, Shama, and thank you, Krishni, for having touched on some of the points which actually I'm going to elaborate on some of them. So thank you very much, Krishni. To start this presentation, I would like to ask the following question. What will we be without the oceans? What will we be without the ocean? And the answer to that question is quite simple. We would be nothing. We would be nothing because the ocean represents livelihood. From the air that we breathe to the food that we eat, from being a source of livelihood to small fishing communities worldwide, to being the piggy bank, I would say, of multinational corporations, the ocean is sustaining life and livelihood on this planet. So recognizing the vital role that the ocean plays for humanity, action have been taken by the international community to ensure that there is a sustainable use and management of ocean resources. So today for this presentation, I am going to elaborate on this topic about management, use of the ocean, laws regulating the ocean. So I'm going to elaborate on the topic of ocean governance. So what I'm going to take you through today are those 3 points about ocean governance. So what is ocean governance? The evolution of it, so the past, the present, and the future, and why is it important? Obviously, the legal aspect is at the heart of it. So I'm going just to take you through this subject. So first, what is ocean governance? So one thing that we have to know is that there is no universally accepted definition for the term ocean governance. So if we take different fields of study, each of them, they have their own interpretation, definition of ocean governance. For example, if you take the political science perspective, so ocean governance here relates to how institutions and political measures are taken to regulate activities in the ocean. If we take ocean governance from a legal perspective, here it refers to how laws could govern the conduct of human activities at sea while protecting the marine ecosystem. And if we look at ocean governance from a social sciences perspective, here it would mean how individuals and society could benefit economically from the use of the sea. So therefore, from those, if you want, different interpretation of the term ocean governance, the essence and spirit of this term are the following. So if we have to combine everything together, that would be and is a working definition for ocean governance. So it relates to a set of norms, rules, and practices which regulate human activities at sea with the view of protecting the marine ecosystem while at the same time reaping economic benefits. So bottom line of this is that ocean governance is, on the one hand, how can we, human, benefit economically from it, sustain our livelihood, while at the same time protecting the essence of our life, which is the ocean. So this is ocean governance, trying to strike that balance between preservation and conservation, and on the other hand, protecting, gaining economically from the ocean. Now, the evolution of the concept, in order to understand how it works and how it is regulated by the law, so we need to know the history of ocean governance. So as we know, since the dawn of time, the sea has been the source of livelihood for many communities, and across the world, fishing communities emerged, whether it is a continent or small island, fishing community emerged because of the resources which the sea provided. So these communities have had a very deep connection with the sea. Not only was the sea a source of food for them, but on a more spiritual and personal level, many communities were connected to the sea. These communities, they have developed practices and customs, so pertaining to the use of the sea. And the most common practice, if you go through the literature and through history, so the most common practices which were developed by local fishing communities were first, so fishing a certain specific species during a certain period of time, devising fishing techniques which would not harm the habitat of marine creatures. And another practice which was developed by communities were a fair distribution of the catch among members of the community. So these practices and customs, which were used by communities centuries ago, are the early illustration of ocean governance. So rules were set up by communities and respected by everyone. Management of the resources obtained was done in a manner which was fair and equitable. And there was, I would say, a virtuous interest in protecting the marine environment. But unfortunately, with the colonization of many countries, power and management of marine resources shifted from small local communities to a central government. And this, unfortunately, has led to a disruption in the management of marine resources at some point in time. And this brings us to the present. So post-World War II, and as many countries were gaining their independence, the international community recognized the importance of the ocean, and that, you know, the need to sustainably use and manage marine resources. So this is where the modern version of ocean governance emerged. So as you can see here, so ocean governance today rests on 3 pillars: a legal framework, an institutional framework, and some implementation strategies. So this is the heart of it, so the legal framework. So I would say, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea is the constitution concerning the law of the sea. You cannot talk about the law of the sea without mentioning the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. So this convention actually embodies a set of rules, a set of regulations, which states have to abide by in order to ensure a smooth, if you want, management and use of the sea. So the main features of this convention are the following. So it has codified customary international law. So meaning that some practices, rules which existed years ago have been embodied in this convention. So I took one example, flag as an international custom. So 200, 300 years ago, in order to identify a ship at sea, the ships had to have a flag. So nowhere was it written that it was mandatory for a ship before it sails to have a flag 3,000 years ago. But today, if you look at Article 91 of the convention, it is written that before sailing, a ship should have one flag. So this is an example of customs, international custom, which have been codified by the convention. And then, and that's the most interesting point of the convention, it has established jurisdiction at sea. So as you know, any coastal state or island surrounded by water, part and parcel of that water surrounding the state, part of it belongs to the state. And this is where a famous division is done. For example, if we look at the territorial zone and contiguous zone, so this part, a country has sovereignty on it. So sovereignty meaning it has full rights and jurisdiction over that part of water. If we move to the EEZ and continental shelf, so here a country has sovereign rights. So sovereign rights meaning that, yes, the country has some rights, but they are limited. Okay, unfortunately, due to time constraint, I won't be able to elaborate lengthily on the technicalities of sovereignty, sovereign rights, and so on. But if you have any question later on, I can address them. And finally, we have the high seas. So what's interesting for the high seas is that no country can claim sovereignty on it. So there's a famous saying about the high seas is that it belongs to no one and everyone at the same time. So it belongs to no one in the sense that, as I've told you a few minutes ago, no country can claim sovereignty on the high seas, right? And it belongs to everyone. Since no one can claim sovereignty on it, no country can say, okay, that the high seas belong to me. So it's open to everyone for use and unfortunately sometimes to abuse. And the next point, the next main feature of the convention is about environmental protection. Actually, the UNCLOS was one of the very first international conventions since the creation of the United Nations to put forward the protection of marine environment. And finally, the fourth and interesting feature of the convention is that it provides for dispute settlement mechanism. So we have the International Tribunal on the Law of the Sea, the arbitration proceedings, and International Court of Justice, which are here to help countries find, if you want, a peaceful way to settle their dispute. So those are the main features of the convention and the heart of ocean governance, because there would not be ocean governance without a legal structure, without a legal backbone. And on an international level, this presentation is based on, if you want, the international perspective. So on an international level, the main framework, the constitution for the sea, is the UNCLOS. And then another important aspect of ocean governance relates to the institutional framework. As I've told you, my focus for this presentation is mainly based on the international experience. So as we have seen, so any activity which is being done, whether it is in the territorial sea, contiguous zone, EEZ, or continental shelf. So all these are regulated by the state. But what happens if there are activities happening in the high seas? So for this, for the regulation of activities in the high seas, so we have various international organizations which take care of it. So we have the International Seabed Authority, which govern mineral mining activities in the high seas. We have the International Maritime Organization, which regulates global shipping activities. And finally, the Food and Agricultural Organization, which promotes sustainable fisheries. And the third and important point concerning ocean governance, is implementation. We can have the best laws possible. We can have all sorts of institutions created, but without proper and effective implementation, ocean governance is doomed. So implementation is as important as the law. And how do we implement a decision? How do we implement strategies to ensure the sustainable use of marine resources? Through those four main areas. First, at the local level. So here, this is where everything starts. At the local level, there should be, as I will refer to a famous law of the sea lawyer, François Ballet. So according to Ballet, for local governance to start, there should be what is known as a community-based co-management. Okay, community-based co-management of marine resources. So this means that local communities should be involved in the decision-making and implementation process of decisions taken by government related to the use and management of local resources. And here I am thinking of Rodrigues, where local fishing communities are highly involved in the decision-making process and implementation of the decision concerning the use and management of the sea in the island. And for me, in the Indian Ocean, one of the best examples is Rodrigues, how the people live with and by their sea. So that's one, so at local level. At national level now, there should be more inclusive consultation. So Krishni was talking about, consultation earlier. So if we want ocean governance to be effective, there should be consultation. And things should not be done in silo, where, let's say, there are different ministries, each one working independently. No, there should be consultation, inclusive consultation, where there's the participation of each and every actor related to ocean management. For example, yes, you have the Minister of Fishing taking a decision, but you should get people from the Ministry of Environment involved. You should get stakeholders, fishing communities involved. So, no one should work in a silo. Concerning the ocean, the word would be integration and collaboration. Then at regional level, so there should be regional collaboration for a sound ocean governance strategy. So regional collaboration brings forward experience, expertise, and resources which a country may not have on its own. And for the African region, we have the African Blue Economy Strategy. And the aim of the strategy is actually to bring forward the resources that each and every country in the region has in order to sustainably exploit the resources of the marine resources of the continent for the economic development of each country individually, but also for the development of the continent. And finally, at the international level, so there must be a synergy and further collaboration between the various intergovernmental agency and maritime institution to address threats linked to the use of marine resources. And as we all know, the threats linked to marine resources on an international level are IUU fishing, piracy, and dumping, among others. And then, so what is the future of ocean governance? So I would say that the future is vibrant and challenging at the same time. So what are the challenges? Here they are. I've mentioned only a few, but those are some, unfortunately, challenges facing ocean governance. So how do we regulate IUU fishing? How do we ensure that the international engagement that states are taking to preserve the marine ecosystem, they are implementing it? Adaptation to climate change, human rights violation at sea, which is increasing, and various forms of maritime crimes and issues of maritime security. So small steps which can be taken in order to address those issues. For example, one thing that can be done to address some of the challenges mentioned above is, for example, the development of no harm or prevention of transboundary harm. So this means the obligation of states to ensure that activities that happen within their jurisdiction do not cause any harm to the environment of other states. So we have environmental impact assessment. So this practice ascertains that there are no, I would say, environmental harm being done prior to an activity being carried out at sea. Precautionary approach. So let's say you want to build a site for aquaculture, you want to build a hotel at X spot. So before you conduct such activity, you need to ensure that, well, what could be the consequences? If you're not sure about the consequences, go and do a study. So this is a precautionary approach. Before embarking on a particular activity, ensure that it will not cause any damage. We have the ecosystem-based approach linked to the precautionary approach. So ecosystem-based approach is linked to the life, if you want, of marine resources. So how can one project on land or even at sea affect the marine ecosystem? Ways to address some of the challenges: marine protected areas and marine spatial planning. So a marine protected area is that you close a particular area at sea, either for no human activity at all, so it is totally closed, or for some activities at sea. The purpose of a marine protected area is actually to protect, as the name says, the resources, the ecosystem of that particular area. And marine spatial planning is simply the division of the sea into various sectors for some marine activities to take place. And yes, I mean, what is the importance of ocean governance? So ocean governance is important because it ensures the sustainable use of the sea and its resources. This in turn ensures ensures life and livelihood on the planet. The international community is recognizing and emphasizing on the importance of protecting the sea. So through ocean governance, laws are established, institutions created, and decisions implemented for the sustainable use of resources. So as mentioned earlier, without the ocean, we are nothing. So the ocean is a source of life below its waters as well as above. And to end, sorry, you can't really see it, but to end, I've used the quote of Sylvia Earle, who said, "With every drop of water you drink, every breath you take, you're connected to the sea, no matter where on earth you live." So thank you very much.
Thank you, Valérie. That was really, really good. That was really interesting. What I noted from this presentation is that so basically mechanisms have to be present at local, national, regional, and international levels. And what's really interesting about the way that you would talk about the high seas is that, like you said, right now it's no man's land. But currently nations around the planet, they are coming together like after 4 sessions of working to come up with an international treaty, which could act like a Paris Agreement, but for the ocean. It's called a Global Ocean Treaty. And this treaty is to bring the countries together so that they can act together to protect the high seas. Valérie, I don't know if you have any more information about it. I think that protecting the ocean in the high seas, because we know that the high seas represent like 40% of the water bodies on the planet, 40% of the surface of the planet, sorry. And they are being overexploited because there is no control about it. But I think that like ocean governance in coastal region or in national jurisdiction waters is different from high seas, but both come with challenges. Valerie, I don't know if you have any comments about it, or Krishni, if you have anything to add to it.
Yes, I mean, we know that I'll take the example of Mauritius. So we are an island state. The landmass of Mauritius, I think it's 2,000 something kilometers square, but our marine territory goes to 2.3 million kilometers square. So just imagine we are a dot in the Indian Ocean and we have such a huge marine territory. Can we really manage it? Though we are a coastal state, can we really manage properly, avoid all sorts of the dangers at sea, all sorts of human rights violation, destruction of the marine ecosystem? We can't. And we are a state having, sovereignty and sovereign rights to do that. Now, imagine the high seas being open to everyone. There, it's supporty, I would say, that probably the word is not the right one, but it's open to everyone, and all sorts of threats, all sorts of dangers happen there, and all sorts of abuse happen there. So yes, as you rightly mentioned, the international community is going towards the creation of a convention, which would be targeted specifically for the high seas. And I just read it a couple of days ago. Still in the negotiation phase, but moving forward quite rapidly. But this will bring along challenges. So that convention would be in contradiction if we look at it from a purely legal perspective. We will have to somehow change the UN clause, which declares the high sea as not belonging to everyone. So if we have states wanting to manage it en parenthèse, it will go against the UN clause. So which one would prevail? So we'll have two laws somehow being in contradiction one with another. So there should be, since we are in the negotiation phase, actually this is one point which can be taken forward, would be how to harmonize these two laws. So harmonizing the two laws would mean we need to find one authority to actually regulate and manage activities of all the other actors, stakeholders involved. So for me, that would be a challenge. Who would be the reference, the authority to go to?
Yes, and just I think Valerie has summed it really well. And for me, the other challenge is how much time also, as I mentioned, treaties take a lot of time to be negotiated. If so much effort is going to go into it as well, then we must make sure, as Valerie has also explained, that states are going to comply with it. And we have also to make sure that it's not going to duplicate any of the terms of the UN clause, and if on the contrary, also be in contradiction to the different sections of the UN clause. So I think it's good and it's promising that they are going ahead with the negotiation of such a text, but we have to make sure that there's no duplication, there's no contradiction, and that also it's going to be properly implemented in the future.
I got that right. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's something I didn't think of. Thank you so much for this. And I just have one really small question. Not question, but I would like to know your perspective about it. So we've been talking a lot about mechanisms and tools that could be used, legal tools that could be used for protection of the ocean and ocean governance. But one thing that you both mentioned was the inclusion of the local communities. So when we're talking about managing a whole space, like a big maritime space like Mauritius, for example, of millions of kilometers squares, how do you make sure that the people are included in the management of that region, knowing that the authority that has power and manages it is basically the Mauritian government? So how do you think the law can be used to include a bit more the civil society activists and scientists into the making of it, into the management of it?
Yes, if I can go first. Yeah. So I have to remember that, of course, the government is the main one that implements legislation. But at the same time, in environmental law, we have the concept of public participation, which is very important. So I think public participation should be used as a tool to make sure that, for example, when there are going to be any project that is going to potentially have an impact on the oceans sustainability, I think the first thing that needs to be done is a proper consultation, and that is through public participation. So I think civil society should really be there and should, it's not just the government's role, but I think civil society should, be more vocal about such things. And I think in terms of the law, it is mentioned in several legislations that concerning the environment that, in case of any project affecting, that is going to have an impact on the environment or on the oceans, in this case, if it is going to have an impact, then the people that are going to be impacted have the right, to be consulted and to make their voices heard. So that is one thing. It is through public participation. And I think governments should also now be more open to this kind of public participation, because we have seen with catastrophes such as the, such as the Wakasho, that when such things happen, it is, as has been the case for that incident, it was not that it was the government took a lot of time to actually take decisions, but it was the local community on the ground that started that spirit of going and everyone coming together and looking for solutions, as we saw in Mauritius. So I think the government should realize the power of these local, communities, these coastal communities, and should integrate them in any decision making that is going to have an impact on the sustainability of our oceans. So, yes.
And if I can just top up on what Krishni has brilliantly explained, I'm going to take it from, I would say, more of an international perspective and learning from other countries' experience. Many islands in the Pacific and even the Caribbean, it is mandatory, it is in the law that local communities, for example, chief of communities, members of local communities, are on boards. So board concerning the decision-making, implementation, are present on the board. So probably this is a lesson to be learned from Mauritius. Yes, we have the soft law aspect, so participation, public participation, but why not move one step further? Implement it in our law that on XYZ board for XYZ activity at sea, have the local community. So this is one experience that we can learn and implement here in Mauritius.
Thank you so much. That was really insightful. So now, if do you have anything else to add, Krishni and Valérie? Do you have anything else to add? Anything that comes to mind? So we can go with the questions. So far we have 3 questions. So we have one question from Bhumesh Kumar Sitaram, who is a student at the University of Mauritius, and he would like to ask about the legal aspect which can be implemented to combat illegal, unregulated and unreported fishing, IUU. There have been several workshops, several panels, discussions by organizations like the IORA, among others, but yet it is a major issue faced by insular nations. So anyone would like to answer to that question? Legal aspect, yeah.
I can jump on this one, and Krishni, you can just...
Yes, Valérie is the expert. Yeah.
So IUU fishing, I have to take it from a local perspective, so country's perspective, and then international perspective. So many countries do not have the capacity to regulate IUU fishing, unfortunately. So let's say there is a Japanese ship coming into your EEZ, fishing tons of catching tons of fish and other marine creatures every day. Unfortunately, many countries do not have the capacity to regulate that. So to regulate IUU fishing, what you need to have is to have super effective, I would say, national coast guards, ships, police ships roaming around your EEZ. Unfortunately, that's the dark reality of it. Many countries, especially island states, and that's the irony, island states, as the name suggests, they have huge, massive territories. But unfortunately, they do not have the capacity, financial, human capacity to regulate that. However, the solution to it would be, this is where the regional aspect come in, have regional collaboration. So for example, in the Indian Ocean region, in the African region, if we pool resources together, I'm sure Kenya would be able to have Mauritius, Tanzania would be able to have Mauritius, South Africa would be ready to have Mauritius. If regionally we pool resources together, I'm sure then we will be able to counter IUU fishing. So that's on, I would say, on the national and regional level. At the international level, mechanisms are there, the money is there. However, what is missing, I would say, is a political will really to combat this activity. So on the one hand, countries have the will, but do not have the resources. On the other hand, they have all the resources needed, but the will is missing. Why is the will missing? And probably now we are going to get into the political debate of it. The will is missing because countries which are conducting IUU fishing massively are the one funding those organizations. So I would not be, I won't bite the hand which is feeding me. So this is, I would say, a more diplomatic political agenda behind. So unfortunately, we are still having this issue with IUU fishing. There are solutions, yes, regionally and locally. Internationally speaking, it's more complicated.
Thank you so much. Yeah, Krishna, please.
Yeah, I think Valerie has summed it very well. So I think also something that can be added is, even though IUU fishing is operated on big scales, massive scales, I think another thing that we can do is in terms of awareness. If there is greater awareness in terms of local communities, I think that that normally would be employed, maybe some of the people that live in coastal regions, and maybe that would be employed and participate in the activities of these big companies. I think if greater awareness is raised that, if you are going to be employed, if you form part of this kind of network of illegal fisheries, then maybe you should also be aware of what impact this is having on your own, livelihood, your own oceans. Okay, so maybe that can deter, that can discourage these people from engaging and getting employed. But I think this is maybe to a lesser scale in terms of really having an impact. But I think Valerie really summed it well, and it's a diplomatic. It's on an international scale. It's a diplomatic issue as well, where there should be greater willingness by states to really put a stop and be really, adamant in trying to at least not. Maybe it would be impossible to totally, stop these kind of activities, but as a first, attempt, I think there should be greater willingness and cooperation, and at least bold steps taken by governments to say that, okay, we need to curb these activities, and what are the different strategies that can be used, and then we should stop supporting these big companies, even though we know that we're going to gain a lot from these activities, but at the end is money more important, or is the sustainability of our oceans more important? Because at some point you're going to fish and fish and fish, but what is going to be left? So you have to think more in terms of, governments have to think not in the short term, but in the long term as well, that this kind of activity is really, really having a negative impact on the sustainability of our oceans. And if they don't act now, then what will happen in the future?
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, both of you. I think that's really complete. So we shall move on to the next question by Sharma Sherlock. He's from Pacific. He or she's from Pacific, I'm sorry. He or she was wondering if there are lessons learned that can be shared on how to manifest the law into the grassroots activities in conserving the ocean. So Krishni or Valerie?
Yes, I think we've already touched upon that question, where Valerie mentioned that, even if we have soft law instruments like public participation for, indigenous communities or, coastal communities to really get, to have their voices heard and to be part of the process. But I think, as Valerie has said, we need to embed this kind of consultation with local communities in the legislations. It's very important, and that is something where she said that we can get a lot of learning experiences from the Pacific and the Caribbean, where such laws already exist to ensure that these communities, their voices, their opinions about any kind of development that is going to impact on the ocean sustainability, that they are part of the process, that that their voices are heard, that their ideas are put on the table, and that if they don't agree to in terms of any aspect of these projects, that the government is going to heed them and not go ahead with these kind of projects. So I think on one side we can use public participation, and on the other side we need hard law. We need to have these this kind of public consultation embedded in the laws of these countries.
And to add to what Krishni said, and putting kind of having along with, I would say, the legal aspect, education is the key. We need to educate people about the importance of the ocean. We need to educate people about how to use marine resources, how to exploit them sustainably. So I think that education also is a key. So knowledge about the ocean governance should not be kept in a book somewhere, but should reach the public. So education as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So we have one last question by Kevin Chinamutu. In Mauritius, we have a beach authority. Do you think we need any more authority regarding ocean preservation?
Okay.
I wonder if it's just, yeah, please do it.
Yes. So I think if to be really, critical, I mean, my colleague, Dr. Mahadev, and I, and Valerie knows Dr. Mahadev, we are part of the law department. We wrote an article, a book chapter actually, on, tourism and its effect on the environment, and, what are the different frameworks that exist in Mauritius to make sure that tourism is in symbiosis with the protection of the environment and not the other way around. And we had a very big part on the beach authority. Unfortunately, if I have to be very independent, the beach authority, everything is on paper. Okay, it does not have, it is quite toothless, if I might say. We have the legislation, we have it in place, we have the mechanism, but for me personally, I don't think it works because there is not enough, I think, how do I say? willingness on the part of authorities to really implement all the different legislation as it should be. So that's why I say it is on paper. There are, of course, some some decisions of the Environmental and Land Use Appeal Tribunal that have relied on the different sections of the Beach Authority, to come up with decisions regarding, any environmental projects that, for example, NGOs have said, are going to impact on the oceans and on the beach, etc. But I think that it's something, it has a lot of promise as an authority to make sure that we protect the beach and the ocean in Mauritius. But I think as the name suggests, the Beach Authority is mainly for the beach. So it is very restrictive. It is not for the ocean per se. And I don't know if Valerie will agree with me. So it is very restrictive. Even if we want to implement the different provisions, it is very restrictive in terms, because it's just supposed to protect the beach. And, the term beach suggests that, it's just the immediate surrounding of the like the beach. But I think we need other maybe mechanisms, other authorities that would be there. But at the same time, we have seen that, even if we were to have other authorities, what would be their effectiveness if there is not strong governmental, if there is not strong administrative pressure to make sure that, the different sections of, whatever legislations implement, the preservation and the conservation of the ocean. So I think, yes, the straight answer to your question is, I don't think that the Beach Authority is really effective because it is really restrictive in terms of what it can protect. And secondly, is that even if we were to come with other authorities, what would be their effectiveness if, their different provisions are not strong enough, and if the penalties that are contained therein are not, strong enough to protect the sustainability of our oceans. So I leave the floor to Valerie.
Yes, I mean, we can have 1,000 authorities, 1,000 commissions, but if their roles are not properly defined, or if defined, they are limited, they won't be able to do much. So if we have to look at ocean governance, be it in Mauritius or any other island state in the region, we have to review the whole system again, because authorities are there, but their tasks are limited. And what we really need, and I think Kishni has highlighted a very interesting point, what we really need are independent institutions. So yes, we have institutions which will work for the government, with the government, but sometimes we need an independent institution which would be able to assess how things are being done. So probably if I do a bit of mind reading here, probably what you're looking is, whether do we have an institution that does ocean governance in Mauritius? The government does it, but we need, that independent body that would say, okay, what you're doing is right, this is right, but there are things to be improved. So if this is what you're referring to, we don't have it here, unfortunately, or not yet.
Thank you. So we have one more question from Shivani Ragavoodoo. Nowadays, less and less direct livelihood linked to sea is looked up. We see the influx of important fish when we are an island. Small fishermen are still marginalized. However, tourism-related activities are glorified while the impacts can be detrimental. So where's the balance with economic development and preserving our ecosystem services, to your perspectives? What's the ideal framework for that purpose? How to regulate and implement ideally?
Okay, so the question is, where's the balance with economic development and preserving? So the question is on tourism, right? How can tourism be better regulated?
Yeah,
Yes.
basically
There are two-
it's contrasting between these two activities, like activities that are necessary for the people and activities that are done for profits, etc. So it's just a contrast. But where's the balance between economic development in general, I guess, and preservation of ecosystem?
Yes, so I think I mentioned it very briefly when I was introducing the topic. So I think there are two aspects to this question. The first one is, as has been rightly mentioned by this young person, there is the glorification of tourism related activities. There is the glorification pandemic, and the tourism world is gaining again what it lost, and I've seen in the newspapers recently there are, I think during the weekend I saw a project that is being celebrated, a new tourist resort destination in Mauritius. And then I was reading the comments in that piece, and a lot of Mauritians, we cannot say that Mauritian, and especially young people, they are very aware of what is happening in terms of the tourism industry. We have been hearing, a lot of talk from experts in the tourism industry saying that, in terms of la relance économique, so the relaunch of tourism in terms of economic benefits after COVID-19 should be used as an opportunity to go towards green and blue tourism. But I don't think this is happening. I attended an event, and I saw that again, the blue economy, we are attaching more importance to the economic implications of the blue economy than the blue perspective. So one of the things that can be done in terms of not just glorifying tourism activities, but also giving importance to all of these people who live in coastal communities, and for example, small and medium enterprises who are using the ocean very sustainably for business. I think they should also be celebrated, because they are the ones that, depend on the ocean, and they are giving a lesson to all these other sectors that, we can use the ocean in a way that would be respectful and sustainable. So this is one thing. And the second thing is that I think in all the different policies and all the different strategies that are being used by the tourism industry, the magnates should not forget that, if we're going to forget about blue tourism and green tourism, then in the long run, Mauritius is not going to be like Seychelles, for example. Seychelles has, and even Rodrigues, there are lessons to be learned from these two, from Seychelles. They have integrated tourism in such a way that they don't use tourism just, for economic benefits, but tourism is there. There is blue tourism, there is green tourism, and it is used in a way that is respectful for the environment. So in terms of, licenses that are being given to tourism, for development projects in the tourism industry, I think the government should weigh the economic benefits and also weigh them in terms of what are the direct or indirect implications, to the beaches, to the sustainability of our oceans, and to properly manage and to say that, we are not going to go into a COVID, a post-COVID world where we're going to use the same strategies as before, but use, the pandemic as a stepping stone to reflect about the sustainability and the blue economy and blue tourism.
Thank you, Krishni. We have just one question, so we will take that last question quickly. So Rani Andes from Indonesia. Mining companies will desire unlimited access to the seabed in the area. So we know that deep sea mining is another topic which is rising now. How will liability be attached for the damage caused to the environment in the seabed? Is there a model law which can be adopted? I think that's a question for Valerie, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. We have the International Seabed Authority, which is the main body which regulates all activities going on, especially mining at sea. So I just have a look at the question. So what will be the liability attached? So first of all, the duty of the ISA is to limit access. Okay, the ISA is not here to grant unlimited access, though this is the wish of many companies and probably countries to have unlimited access. But the role of the ISA is to give you limited access. You want to mine, yes, but these are the conditions. So there exists an authority which actually regulates mining at sea. So this is the ISA. And the role of the ISA also is to ensure that before granting that license, the ISA would lay down the terms and conditions. And one of those terms and conditions would be to a maximum avoid damaging the marine resources or activities. So what will happen before granting a license? So the ISA would ask the country to do an environmental impact assessment, ensure where is the mining is being done, and ensure whether in that particular spot, if mining is being done, will they damage the ecosystem? So if yes, it's going to affect the ecosystem, the role of the ISA is to refuse to do that. So that's one thing. But it comes back again, whether countries are doing that mining legally or illegally. So those requesting a permission from the ISA, there would be a very minutious I would say, investigation before the license is granted. But if countries do it illegally, unfortunately, where to find them, how to find them, and how to regulate them would be complicated. So we have, on the one hand, asking permission and being properly regulated. On the other hand, doing it illegally. So if that answered your question, yes, there exist rules and regulation, all this under the aegis of the ISA.
All right, thank you so much, Valerie. I think we can wrap up now. We are a bit over the time. So Valerie and Krishni, if you want to give like a really brief summary about what you said, about points that we need to really have in mind and steps forward, I will leave the floor to you so you can like refresh a bit our brain, because there has been a lot of information flowing around.
And that's fine for me. I mean, if there are any further questions, you can just write an email, send me an email, and I'll be happy to assist.
Yes, it's the
Perfect,
same.
thank you.
Yeah, it's the same for me. I would just take the opportunity to thank the AIS for setting this up, and thanks to you, Shama, also, and for all the great work that you're doing in the background. So thank you so much.
Thank you both for everything you're doing. And yes, so thank you everyone for being here and for the organization of this webinar again. To close this event, so basically there has been like a competition that took place about on Instagram, if I'm not mistaken, and so two lucky winners. We have two lucky winners who won the eco-friendly bottle from Ecolosil based on an internal draw. So basically our two winners are Elkana and Sitaram Akash. Congratulations, guys. The AIS forum will contact you through Instagram. Yeah, I would like to thank everyone for their participation. This is a really important discussion to have, and ocean governance is now more important than ever, especially with the climate crisis and with everything that's happening. So yeah, thank you all. I would like to say thank you again to the speakers for speaking so openly about things that are really touchy. And it's really important that we say things plainly as they are. Many gaps have been identified and there's a lot of work to do, but yeah, I think that we have a clearer picture of what is needed, what is required, especially in the law sector, because we already talk about science. Science is already talking, but the law part, we have not so much visibility on it, especially in Mauritius. So thank you a lot.
The Archipelagic and Island States, or AIS Forum, are committed to take part in a collective forum addressing sustainable development issues. The cooperation between AIS countries focuses on 4 thematic areas of collaboration, namely climate change mitigation and adaptation, blue economy, marine plastics debris, and good maritime governance. The Archipelagic and Island States Forum was established by Menando Joint Declaration.
We are different in many ways, but we share the same challenges.
The biggest problem I see is the climate change. There's something you could do. From today on, stop using single-use plastic. It's the very highest contributor for pollution in the sea.
The world is starting to wake up that we have long known, that without our precious environment, none of us have a future.